Hey gals and guys, what is going on? Look, today I decided to get out here and just shoot an evening of fly fishing on Sheridan Lake. It's just past the first week in September and we're just starting to see some cooler temperatures, which is great. But yeah, I'm going to kind of take you through how I'm just going to chuck some cameras around the boat and kind of how that all works out, what equipment fly-wise I'm going to try out. And, you know, not a planned shoot, not a serious edit, just kind of a evening angling. I've only got about an hour and a half before dark. You know, this time of the season in the fall, that sun drops super fast. But the temps are dropping fast too. Right now, looking at 65 as a surface temp. So she's still a little bit warm, you know, for this time of the year, but fish are starting to move around a little bit. Look, we had frost on the roofs at the resort this morning, which is why I'm out here, to tell you the truth. Been kind of holding off, been doing some deeper gear fishing the last month, but you know, not really into the you know, the entomology side of things, as it was, you know, pretty doldrumy, so to speak. So yeah, I'm just gonna get anchored up here in an old trustworthy spot, show you some of the kind of the cameras that we're just gonna kind of set up around the boat and just kind of go for it. We are marking a few little slashes down at 15 to 18 feet. So I got a GoPro 9 set up here. I'm just gonna run that pretty much as long as it can till the battery or the card kind of times out, but that's gonna be pointing at the bow. And then what I've got here on the chest pack is a 10. Yeah, lots of slashes there. Between right at the bottom and 10 feet. So I'm just gonna move a little bit, forward up here and drop anchor. I've actually decided to move this 9 to the back. I've got a mount that I put on the outboard, and because my tripod, it's just going to be in the way up there, so I think that one will do fine. Cool thing with the motor mount GoPro is you can use your wheel to turn it if something's exceptional is happening. So get that one framed, and I'm just going to run that pretty much now. I've brought 3 setups, set them up before I came out, just kind of guessing what I might be using. All 3 are linear 10-foot 4-inch fly rods. I've got this first 6104 set up with a balanced, well actually downturned eye sparkle leech on a SA indicator line. Got about 20 feet a leader ready to go on that. The second floating is the 5104. That's with Scientific Anglers weight forward 5 weight tight and long smooth with a 20-foot leader also set up with an indicator, and this has a small brown crystal and chartreuse downturned eye, real small mini leech, almost looks like a damsel. And then the third setup is a real bushy dubbed dragon on SA's 357 fast sink. So I'm going to start off with the 2 floating line setups, shoot out dual indicators, try and hook up with those suspended fish I saw, and then if that's not working, maybe search the depths. But I'm going to try not move too much and take it easy and just stick to the spot here. So got these handy rod keepers from Mark Roseboom at Lone Butte Sporting Goods. Love them. I'm always shitty with my rod organization, and they've helped me with that. You know, so paying attention, obviously, to your sounder as you're moving around and coming into that zone that you've marked a few fish, paying attention to the depth that they're in and that they're laying in, and remembering it when you move ahead is important. I knew back there they were kind of in that 15 to 18 feet. They're holding in some of that 20 water, so I'm going to set this indie to that. Now, I'm 5'11", so I'm going to do arm to arm. That gives me what I figure is almost 6. Another arm to arm, which I figure is almost 6. And then I'm gonna add about 4 feet to that and peg it right there. Double check. 6, 12, 13, 14, so that's what I'm confident as 15 feet. It's with the loop knot, downturned eye sparkle leech, and I'm gonna start with that, fire that out. Turn on the chest pack GoPro. Something that I recently bought, which I'm super happy about, which I've seen others using, is these rod holder risers. That's a 14-inch riser. I think it's 14. Oh, they just make life so easy for everything. They're just not down at the gunnel. They're up where you would grab for them and where you'd want them to be. Makes a lot of sense. So, using a fairly long leader, I'm going to widen my loops a bit here. Not going for distance, going for presentation. And that one laid out pretty nice, so I'm happy with that. I'm gonna check my drag on this because it's going into the holder. And I've got the breeze at my back, exactly where I want it, because it's gonna lay that line fairly taut. Now that doesn't always happen. It's really weird. Sometimes you can have the wind behind you and for some reason, there's an upwelling or something occurs and your gear comes back towards it, which is super strange, but it does happen. So not all the time is the situation that when you're got the wind to your back that your indie's gonna stay tight, your indicator. Sometimes it can come drifting towards you to the side, and that's all because of some strange phenomenon that's going on down below. Now this is the small olive and chartreuse, which could be a damsel, could be a mini leech, it could be a few different things. It's a 14 downturned eye, and I'm coming out here using tonight flies that I've never used. They were sent to me graciously in the mail, and they both look great. So, you know what? Why not go try some new flies? I'm gonna run this one because it's smaller. And I'm just gonna try it a little shallower. I know it sounds strange because we're all tuned into how chironomid fishing is supposed to go, that you want to be just off the bottom. That's not always the case with late summer and fall fishing. Fish can be suspended, so I'm sticking this one right at the 12 mark. Now both of these indicator rigs do have micro swivels. They're SAs, micro swivels, set up right around 30 inches above the presentation. And I just like it. It's small, helps everything get down, I believe, a little bit quicker. But I think what's more important than anything is it'll hold it taut. So once your setup's completely sank or sunken, those little swivels can do a job of holding things in place. Helps them sink a little faster, but for me, it's that they hold them in place. I'm gonna fire this one out a little more north than the other one. That seems to be where the wind's moving to, so this one should sit fairly nice. Not a huge long cast, just a nice comfortable close cast, so I can see both indies here. Now it's just the old waiting game. A good idea is having the one in the holder. Now I know this one here, over here has sank. So I'm gonna switch with this one that's on its sink, heading to the bottom, and I'm gonna work this guy here. Nice little surface ripple for indie fishing, especially these smaller leeches. These are down-turned eyed, not a true balance, but they kind of hang at a little bit different of an angle. I see another mayfly, one here, one there. Fish aren't rising on them, all right, for anything that's any sort of concern, but man, these guys have been hatching for 4 months. Healthy mayfly population in Sheridan, that's for sure. Yeah, I got all sorts of wind shift now, and that can be pretty common as temperatures cool when you're getting towards the kind of the midway mark in the evening. It's been windy. It either can sit right down, or you'll get some of those variables as the land is cooling off. It's okay, both of my floating lines are behaving the same right now. I've got more control on this one, obviously, because it's in my hand, but I'm okay with this turn that's happening, and the reason why is that rod is pretty much in grabbing distance. Chances of a superior hook set on this one right now isn't that great. This one is quite a bit better. Like we were talking about before, although the winds, it's actually a bit variable now, but although the winds hit my back a little bit, it's more quartering now, this setup's coming back towards me. It's one of those mysteries. I'm just gonna clear it, get it out on that side into safe water. Good searching, but safe water. Concentrate on this one. Now in British Columbia, when you're alone in a boat, angling alone, you can fish 2 rods. When there's 2 anglers in a boat, it's only 1 each. So because I'm out here on my own this evening, I can fish 2 rods. You notice I'm kind of paying more attention to the first setup I showed you. That's fished a little deeper. I can see this one, I think, with an indicator that's set a little bit shallower. Sometimes you have a bit of a better chance of a self-set, but when you do have a long setup, a long indicator depth adjustment, you've got a natural right angle, which creates organically a ton of slack, and you do have to have a pretty wild hook set if it's a light bite when you're fishing a long leader. So I'm preferring to kind of keep this one in my paws and that one out there on its own. Been about the 20-minute mark here, kind of fishing the deeper gut of this section of the lake. So what I'm going to do is, as it's slowly starting to cool down, getting closer to dark, I'm going to slide back a bit. Seen a few jump back over there. It's about 10-12 feet, so might give that a shot. Like I said, as that water starts to cool down a bit, maybe head in over there. Got my 2 floating lines completely split. One's drifted off the bow here and I've recasted one. So I'm covering, pretty good portion of that, but I'm pretty much fishing the same technique. They're both vertical. One's a little bigger, but they're both kind of vertical hanging leech patterns. And I think what I'll do when I move back over into that bay a bit is keep with one of them and then fire out that buggy dragon imitation. Keep the indicator rod sitting in the rod holder and then keep that dragon fast stripping on the sinking line in my hand. As I'm bringing this one in, instead of just ripping it back, and just do a little bit of a retrieve. I get asked all the time, which rod do I prefer, the 5104 or the 61? Every time I switch, I really like the one I'm holding. Not a sales pitch. The 5 is definitely a little bit lighter. And reacts super well. Great with tight and long and in a 5 lines like that. But the 6 is a powerhouse. So I'm split down the middle. Every time I switch over and pick one up, I'm like, oh, yeah, that one. That's good news. It's good news for me. Got a spider web on that anchor roller. So many spiders this year. I've just been gorging on mayflies, crons, all of it. Shut that camera off for a minute or two. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna leave it on. This GoPro died back here. That's a pretty hard-packed section of that channel. There's no mud or nothing on those anchors. Something to note. My boat's always a shit show when I move spot to spot if I'm not running. Basically just keep the lines stripped in and safe. So this is 15 back in here. I'm gonna post up in 12. Switch up a little bit on this sinking line. I'm gonna use this rubber leg dubbed deer hair. Could be a gumpus. This is a size 10. It's a smaller pattern, but that's what I'm gonna use on the fast sinking line, so this kind of floats up, obviously. And I'm gonna adjust and chuck a smaller leech imitation on that other indie rig here. All right, fired out the small downward eye mini leech on the indie rig. Now I've got this dragon on this lightning fast 357 sinking line. You got to pay attention with these fast sinking lines. You know, you got to keep them crawling and moving. You got to be on it, else they hit bottom pretty quick. The benefit of having a deer hair dragon or floating pattern is obviously that fly's going to hang and stay up a bit, keep you somewhat clean. Now, don't believe that happens all the time. If you're fishing in long weeds, just because you have a floating dragon pattern doesn't mean that even though it's up at this angle, it's still not going to hit weeds. You got to be cautious of that as well. And with the 357, you could summarize it all up and say it's sinking about 6 inches a second, which is pretty easy to calculate. Every 2 seconds is a foot. So knowing what depth you're casting out into and retrieving up, it's pretty easy to make that calculation. It's always good to do kind of S-curves with your boat. I know we all get in a rush to get over to a productive section of water, kind of beelining. But if you do an S-curve and have the back of your boat, the stern, swinging around, you're sounding, if that's where your transducer is, you're sounding a good section of that. .24 seconds for 12 feet. When you're stripping dragons, floating dragons, or regular dragon imitations, it's super creative with your stripping. They have a little jet propulsion system in their body. They're very sporadic and they can take off and launch, and it's pretty impossible to completely mimic that by just pulling fly line. So don't be afraid to, there's a nice one. Don't be afraid to strip, pause, fast strip, slow hand twist, all of it. You're just trying to, ideally, in my mind, get a fish's attention. Well, one more switch. It's getting darker here, so I normally make like my last switch and stick to them for like the last half an hour instead of having the flies out of the water and your head in the fly box the whole time. But what I'm switching to is a classic black sparkle with bead, it's a fluorescent orange bead head for the indie rig. And I'm gonna stick to the Dragon for searching this shoal, fast stripping. It's fish or not, when you're stripping a floating Dragon along bottom, the anticipation is high. If it's a no fish evening, at least I could say that I was stripping a big Dragon down there, which is important. So I'm just going to adjust right now this this indie rig, and I'm actually going to bring it up a little bit shallower out there. So it's floating around that 8 foot mark, I think, 6 to 8, because we're losing light. So of course light's on top, and give them something to look at. So I'm going to make that shift, make that change right now. So I've got that new little suspended, a little bit bigger of a leech pattern with a red bead, a sparkle in it. I've got it set to 8 feet. I fired that out over there across the ledge. Tighten that drag a little bit, shove it in the holder and ignore it. Well, be cross-eyed a little bit watching it, but I'm not going to concentrate on it. I'm going to go back to the Dragon on the sinking line and spend the evening with the Dragon. I just felt a tick there. I wasn't counting while I was blabbing, and that was like a bottom tick. It's a little tick tick. So that's good. I know I'm right along the weeds there. And I'm able to look at that indie that I said I'd ignore. Oh yeah. Gotta love that sound. Just lets you know you're in trout country. If you're watching this, I know you're going, come on, nail that Dragon. I'm thinking the same thing. Anytime I tick bottom, I check it on that retrieve once I get back. Last thing you want to do is spend the rest of your fishing time dragging some piece of marl or shoal or wood, dragging something along on that fly. It's worth checking it. Sometimes, which is super important to mention when you're fishing floating Dragons, because of the way that they go down, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm always doing, after I cast and I'm letting it sink, a slight hand twist retrieve, because you can get a lot of fish on Dragons on the drop. It's just something that happens the way it's dragging in. Remember, when your fly lines are sinking, they're actually sinking towards you. If you do the math, they're not sinking like this, or else you'd have to be actually stripping out line and pushing it away. They're sinking toward you, so that those flies are always swimming when they're dropping. So I've had many takes with these patterns while the fly's going down. So ideally, I want to make sure that I have a slight retrieve happening as it's sinking. Just a real slow hand twist. This GoPro's just nuked. I was gonna try and film that, but she's done. But to crank the ISO up on the camera. This will be my last probably 5 minutes this evening. What I've done is I've switched sides of the boat now and casting in towards shore. Which we all know you've got a chance of hitting a fish a little shallower, a little later. So now I have to be more cautious of the sink rate with that fast sinking line, but I do have a floating pattern on, so kind of in the safe zone. Just need to be a little quicker on the draw, get the count right, and then that retrieve right. Remember too, when you're fishing these patterns, which I'll show you, keep that dead straight, telegraphed from where your fingers are retrieving, the angle of that rod, straight down in line with that sinking line, that pattern. The takes can be ferocious when you're dead straight at them, but what it does is it gives you that sensitivity when that take happens to lift. You do want heavier tippet because there's less shock that happens when you're pointing straight down at a fly and retrieving fairly quickly, especially with the faster sinking line. But always remember, you don't want your rod at this angle. You want it matching how that line's descending down into the water column and where you're stripping. And that's how you get those lightning strikes, because you're pretty much straight. I mean, you're gonna feel the take on this hand, not the rod tip. You do gotta be careful. I've got about a 10-minute run, so this is the time of the evening when I make one more cast, one last cast, and then pack the rods up and put the cameras away and run back. Back in the days, in my 20s and late teens, we'd stay out always to dark. Rarely caught anything at dark, but we'd stay out till dark. It was like right to the bitter end. I think I've matured a little bit since then now, and I've got it kind of timed when I'll be back, and it'll still be able to see where I'm walking a little bit. Hey, well, thanks for watching. You never know what's gonna happen. It's fishing. And I wanted to bring you out tonight for my little after dinner, after work fish, and throw a couple cameras up and just have a chat while I was angling, and not even a sniff. I'm sure of it. Not even a take, not even a light bite, nothing. Got the big 0 tonight, but hey, that's fishing, and it's all about getting out, trying things and loving the places you go.